paradromatales. We had an agreement. He wouldn't change diapers, and I was okay with that. Until the day I wasn't. Until the day I was bleeding, overwhelmed, elbows deep in packing tape, and I asked him just once to help. He said no, and somehow I ended up feeling like I broke the deal. Before the baby, everything was theoretical. We had conversations like two adults building a life together, with calendars and logic and equal voices. We talked about work schedules, bedtime routines, and yes, diapers. My fiancé made it clear, early on, that he really truly hated changing diapers. Something about the smell, the mess, it just got to him. And I remember saying, okay, that's fine. I don't mind it. And I didn't. At the time, I really didn't. It felt like a fair trade. I had been around babies more than he had, and honestly, I thought, how bad could it be? A little gross, sure, but manageable. Plus, I like the idea of each of us knowing our roles, having a clear plan. That's what good partners do, right? They agree, they commit, they stick to the deal. Back then, we thought parenting was going to be about division of labor, who does what and when. We thought that if we just laid it all out on the table beforehand, we could avoid resentment. That was the word we kept trying to outrun, resentment. So we made agreements like people who hadn't lived the reality yet. He'd handle the finances and heavy lifting. I'd take the lead on diaper duty. He'd manage the logistics. I'd manage the crying. It all sounded fair. On paper. I remember one night lying in bed before the baby was born, he turned to me and said, I really appreciate that you're taking this part on. He meant the diapers. He was being sincere. He wasn't trying to get out of something. He genuinely believed he couldn't handle it well, and he was grateful I could. And I took that gratitude and folded it into myself like a badge. I'm capable. I'm the one who can handle what he can't. I'm the strong one. That's the part no one tells you about when you're agreeing to things before a baby arrives. You're still imagining a version of yourself that isn't sleep-deprived, bleeding, overstimulated, and trying to remember if you ate that day. You're agreeing with a version of yourself who doesn't yet know how heavy the word always can feel. So when I said, I'll do all the diaper changes, I thought I was saying, I'll contribute. I didn't know I was also saying, even when I'm falling apart. Even when I haven't showered in 3 days. Even when my back is aching and the world is stacked around me and I just need just one, moment where someone else takes the mess so I can breathe. We made that agreement with love, and logic, and good intentions. But love doesn't live on paper, and logic doesn't change diapers at 3 a.m. And good intentions don't always know what a postpartum body and mind will feel like when they're stretched to the edge. So yes, we had a deal. But now, I'm learning that even the fairest-sounding promises can feel like shackles when reality finally arrives. When the baby came, the world got very small. Suddenly, everything revolved around feeding, sleeping, and crying. His and sometimes mine. Hours blurred into each other. Morning became afternoon, became 3 a.m., and I started measuring time not by clocks, but by how many ounces he'd taken, how many diapers we'd gone through, how long I could keep my eyes open before they shut on their own. And the truth is, for a while, I was okay. I had read the books, watched the videos. I had braced myself for the fog, for the milk-stained shirts, for the quiet unraveling of what I used to know as normal. I expected exhaustion, I expected hormones, I expected to lose myself a little. But what I didn't expect, what no one really warns you about, is how relentless it is. There is no clocking out, no weekends, no space to sit and remember who you are outside of this tiny crying person who needs you for everything. I became his source of food, his comfort, his heat, his everything. And slowly I became less and less of anything to myself. No one tells you how heavy doing fine can feel when it's held up by sheer willpower and 45-minute naps. Or how quickly, I've got this turns into, I have no idea what I'm doing, whispered into the glow of the baby monitor at 2 a.m. My fiancé was supportive in the way that made sense to him. He held the baby. He fetched things. He handled calls and errands and let me nap when he could. He told me I was doing great. and he meant it. But still, I felt alone in a way that's hard to explain without sounding ungrateful. Because this wasn't about lack of love. It was about the invisible weight of responsibility. The kind that doesn't clock in or out. The kind that wraps around you when the baby stirs, even if someone else is holding him. The kind that keeps you on edge, scanning the room for burp cloths and pacifiers, always anticipating the next cry, the next feed, the next task. I began to feel like I was failing at things no one could see, like I should be packing for the move faster, like I should be cooking more, like I should be showering regularly, like I should be handling the house, the child, the diapers, everything without complaint, because that's what I agreed to. And maybe I could have, if I wasn't bleeding, if I wasn't leaking, if I wasn't waking up 6 times a night, if I wasn't physically holding a human body every hour of the day and trying to remember to drink a glass of water between cries. But life doesn't pause just because you're overwhelmed. We had a move coming, boxes everywhere, a new home waiting, and I was falling behind. I'd set a timer and try to pack while the baby napped. Some days I got 15 minutes. Other days maybe an hour before the crying started again. And always, no matter how deep into the mess I was, I had to stop and be everything to him again. That was my new world. A world where every box I packed came second to a baby's cry. Where my body was always tired, my hands were always full, and asking for help felt like renegotiating a contract I never realized could become so fragile. They say a change of scenery can be good for the soul, so when we planned the trip, a road trip to visit his family, I told myself it might be exactly what I needed. A break, a pause, a few days where I could just be somewhere else, where maybe someone would hold the baby long enough for me to finish a cup of coffee while it was still hot. I packed everything. Diapers, wipes, bottles, nursing pads, clothes for every weather possibility, the white noise machine, and extra pacifiers. I didn't pack a book. I didn't pack makeup. I packed like someone preparing for war, not rest. And then we drove. 7 hours in a car with a 4-month-old who doesn't like car seats is not a break. It's a test. A slow unraveling set to the soundtrack of intermittent wails and rushed roadside nursing stops. But still, I kept thinking, once we get there, it'll be easier. We arrived to smiles and hugs and offers to help, well-intentioned but mostly symbolic. Because helping with a baby sounds lovely until it involves a full diaper or a scream that won't stop. Then suddenly people remember they have to stir something in the kitchen, or they hand him back with an apologetic laugh and he only wants his mama. Of course he does. I'm his entire world. But sometimes I wanted to scream, can I not just be a person for 1 hour? Instead, I smiled. I rocked. I nursed. I bounced on balls in the guest room and changed diapers on bathroom counters and excused myself every 20 minutes for one reason or another. Everyone kept telling me I looked great, that the baby was precious, that I was doing such a good job. And I was. But I wasn't resting. I was performing. Because that's what a vacation becomes when you're a new mom. It's just parenting somewhere else. Without the comfort of your own couch, your own noise machine, your own fridge full of snacks you actually want. It's a new set of eyes watching you bounce, and a new group of people to politely tell, no, he doesn't take a bottle yet, for the 10th time. By the time we got home, I was more tired than when we left. And now the real chaos was waiting. Boxes, logistics, the move in 2 days. I walked into the house and looked at the things I hadn't packed, and felt the tightness climb up my chest, like a slow-burning rope. My body was still bleeding. My brain was foggy. My back hurt from hours of car seat twisting and breastfeeding on hotel beds. My baby was overtired, and so was I. I didn't say it out loud, but I felt it settle deep in my bones. That wasn't rest. That was just another chapter in a book I hadn't agreed to write. So when the diaper blowout happened 2 days later, when I was on the floor trying to wrap a fragile vase in newspaper while balancing breast pads and a heating pad and a hungry baby, I didn't ask for much. Just one thing. One moment of help. And the way he said no, it landed like a door closing on every unspoken thing I carried during that trip. It wasn't the first diaper of the day. It wasn't even the worst one we'd seen in 4 months. But something about that particular blowout, the mess, the timing, the fact that I was kneeling on the floor surrounded by fragile things I was trying to pack before they got stepped on. Something about that one just broke the surface. The baby started crying, loud and sharp, the kind of cry you don't ignore. He was clearly uncomfortable, squirming in his dad's arms. I looked up, hands full of tape and newspaper and sweat clinging to the back of my neck. He was already walking toward me. "He had a blowout," he said. "Here." I blinked. "Can you do it?" He stopped mid-step. "We agreed." "I know what we agreed," I cut in, not unkindly, but with a tremor of something too tired to hide anymore. "But I'm in the middle of packing. My hands are dirty. There's glass everywhere, just this once." He didn't move. "Come on," I said. "It'll take 2 minutes." He shook his head, calm, annoyingly calm. "We made a deal. You said you'd handle diapers. I've been taking care of him all day. I'm tired too." And just like that, the conversation wasn't about a diaper anymore. It was about the rules, the invisible contract we had written before we knew what this life would look like. The one where I took diapers, he took dishes. We both pretended that everything would always fall neatly into place, as if life with a newborn ever listened to structure. He was right, technically. We had made that deal. But there I was, bleeding, tired, arms aching from holding our son all night, trying to wedge 30 seconds of momentum into a day built on interruptions. And I wasn't asking for a new agreement. I was asking for grace, for him to look at me, see the mess, see me, and choose help over principle. But instead, he held the line. So I stood up, peeled off my gloves, and took the baby. The moment felt small, quiet even, but something inside me sunk. Not because he hadn't changed the diaper, but because I realized I couldn't count on him to bend, even when I was breaking. He went back to what he was doing. I wiped and changed and rocked and cooed. And I kept thinking, this isn't about the diaper. It never was. This was about whether we were still in this together, or just living alongside each other, sticking to bullet points instead of reading the moment. This was about a man keeping his word, and a woman realizing that sometimes the word you keep can feel colder than silence. We didn't talk for a while after that. Not out of anger, but out of disappointment. And disappointment, I've learned, is quieter than rage. It doesn't shout. It just lingers. He thought I was mad about a diaper. But I wasn't. I was mourning the version of us. Might have paused the rules, just long enough for one act of tenderness. He kept saying the same thing. But you agreed. Like it was a spell meant to end the conversation. Like those 3 words were enough to override everything else. My exhaustion, the baby's cries, the boxes piled behind me, the ache in my back that had been humming since 5 a.m. And he wasn't wrong. I did agree. Months ago, before the baby, when I still believed that agreements were the same as understanding. When I thought that saying, "I'll take care of all the diapers," meant something strong and fair. Not something I'd regret whispering into a version of life I didn't fully understand yet. But standing there, 4 months postpartum, sleep-deprived, juggling breastfeeding, hormones, and the constant noise of a baby who needed more than I had to give, his words didn't sound like fairness. They sounded like rules over reality. I wasn't trying to break the deal. I was asking for help. Help not as a new expectation, but as an act of care. And what I needed, really needed, wasn't someone to clean up the mess. It was someone to see me inside it, to say, "You look like you're drowning. Let me throw you a rope." Instead, I got the contract read back to me. He'd helped with the baby all day, he said. He was tired too. He wasn't trying to be difficult. He just didn't want to set a new precedent. He didn't want to start something he couldn't keep up. And I understood. I do understand. but there's a difference between a pattern and a moment. And when your partner, the person who watches you carry so much every single day, can't step into one moment of discomfort for your sake, something starts to shift. Because I wasn't asking for a new deal. I was asking for love in action. Not the flowers and dinners kind, but the I see you on your knees holding this family together kind. We get so caught up in being fair that we forget how to be soft. So afraid of losing balance that we forget how to lean. Yes, we had an agreement. But love isn't just about what you promise in advance. It's about who you become when the moment asks more of you than you planned for. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, I know we said one thing, but I see what's happening now. And I choose you. That's not failure. That's grace. That's marriage. And that's what I needed. Not the reminder that I said I'd do it, but the kind of partner who could look at me, hair matted, hands full, a tiredness that lives in the bones, and still say, I've got this one, just this one. It was just one time. That's what he said later, when things had cooled, when the baby was sleeping and the house was quiet except for the soft thud of cardboard boxes shifting in the hallway. It was just one diaper, he said. Why are you making it into more than it is? And maybe that's what scared me most. That he didn't see it. That he thought this was about the diaper. That he couldn't understand why this one refusal sat so heavy in my chest. Why I kept looking at him. Not angry, but distant, like I was trying to measure something invisible between us. Because it wasn't just about that moment. It was about what it revealed. What happens the next time I ask for help? And it doesn't fit neatly into the structure we built before the baby. What happens when our child is sick and I need him to stay up all night with me, even if we'd agreed that sleep shifts were my thing? What happens when life throws something unexpected, something exhausting, something heavy, and I need him to break the rule book, not recite it? If he couldn't bend once, when I was clearly worn down and reaching for support? What happens when the stakes are higher? I wasn't thinking about that one diaper. I was thinking about the next 5 years. I was thinking about birthday parties, school pickups, doctor's visits, stomach flus, career setbacks, late-night tears, and all the tiny, unplanned moments when one of us would have to show up tired or irritated or over capacity and do it anyway, because that's what real partnership is, not splitting tasks evenly, but showing up unevenly sometimes when the other is on the floor. I kept wondering, if I hadn't asked, would he have noticed how much I was carrying? Or was it only the request that made him even see the load? That one moment, just one time, felt like the first crack in something I hadn't realized could even crack. Not because he was cruel, but because he didn't know what it cost me to ask. And that, to me, is where the real warning lived. Because love isn't just about doing your part. It's about noticing when your partner can't do theirs, and stepping in anyway. I don't need a man who keeps perfect score. I need one who sees the game has changed and adjusts. Not out of obligation, but out of care. That diaper wasn't the problem. It was the quiet realization that if this was how we handled the small emergencies, what would happen when the big ones came? There's a kind of tiredness no nap can fix. It seeps into your bones, sure, but deeper than that, it settles into your sense of self. You start forgetting what you used to enjoy, what used to feel like you. You stop counting the hours of sleep you didn't get. You stop saying, I'm tired out loud, because at some point it becomes the air you breathe. Not an exception, but the rule. That's the kind of tired I was sitting in. And loneliness. Well, I always thought that was something you felt in an empty room. But it turns out it's more complicated than that, because I wasn't alone. I had a baby who needed me every 2 hours. I had a partner who lived in the same house. We ate meals together, texted during the day, coordinated feeding times and grocery runs. We weren't fighting. We weren't distant in the way most people imagine when a relationship starts to drift. But I still felt alone, because there's a different kind of loneliness that shows up when you're emotionally outnumbered, when you're overwhelmed but still expected to perform, when you're drowning quietly, and the person next to you is talking about how warm the water feels. I don't blame him for not feeling what I felt. I don't even blame him for sticking to the agreement. But in that moment, when I asked for help, and he looked at me and said no, I didn't just feel tired. I felt unseen. And that's worse, because it makes you wonder, how long have I been carrying this without him noticing? I'd started to narrate my days in quiet mental checklists, fed the baby, changed 4 diapers, folded half a box of clothes, cleaned 2 bottles, packed 1 drawer, tried to eat, failed, kept going anyway. And none of it ever felt like enough. I wanted to be good at this. I wanted to show him I could handle it, that the agreement worked, that I was strong, capable, grateful. But on the inside, I was craving something simple, someone to say, "You don't have to hold all of this by yourself." Just once. Just enough to remind me I wasn't invisible inside the role of mother, packer, cleaner, planner, feeder, default parent. That day, after the blowout, I sat on the edge of the bed with the baby asleep in my arms and stared at the wall like it might answer a question I didn't know how to ask out loud. Is this how my life is going to feel now? Not because of the baby, never because of him, but because the person I trusted to be in this with me was standing at a distance that didn't look like distance, but felt like it in every tiny refusal to lean in. And I realized this wasn't just physical exhaustion, it was emotional solitude. And that's the kind of tired that makes you start imagining a different kind of life. One where your strength isn't assumed, your pain isn't invisible, and the person beside you doesn't just wait for you to fall apart before they step forward. I kept trying to tell myself it was just a diaper, just one refusal, one moment, one task. But no matter how many times I tried to downplay it, no matter how many times I reminded myself that we had an agreement, I couldn't shake the feeling that something much bigger had shifted that day. It wasn't about the 2 minutes it would have taken him to lay the baby down and wipe him clean. It wasn't about the smell or the mess or who had done more that morning. It was about what his no actually cost. Because when you say no to a diaper, what you're really saying no to is the person asking. You're saying no to their limits, no to their exhaustion, no to their unspoken plea to not have to carry everything, just this once. That's the cost. The moment goes by quickly, but the meaning lingers. It sits in the next conversation. It shapes the next request. It teaches me to hesitate before asking again. That day, something settled in me. Not anger, not resentment, not even sadness, really. Just clarity. Clarity that in our relationship, my exhaustion wasn't reason enough to shift the plan. Clarity that my well-being could be acknowledged with words, but not with action. Clarity that the weight of this family would always fall back to me unless I physically collapsed or stopped asking. And that's a dangerous thing in a marriage, when one person starts keeping score and the other starts swallowing their pain to keep the peace. Because I wasn't trying to test him. I wasn't waiting for him to fail. I was just tired. And I wanted so badly to be seen, to be helped without having to justify it, to have him look at the floor, see the mess, see me in the middle of it, and decide, without being asked, that this moment mattered more than the rule we made before either of us knew better. But instead, I got a line. But you agreed. And in that moment, I realized something. Commitment without compassion becomes control, and fairness without flexibility becomes failure. We'd made a fair deal. But love doesn't always ask you to be fair. Sometimes it asks you to be kind. To notice when the cost of staying rigid is a partner who stops reaching for you. I didn't say much after that. I packed the boxes, changed the diapers, took care of our son with all the love I had. But something inside me stayed folded, not broken, just smaller, like a part of me had quietly taken note. This is the price of needing too much. And next time, maybe don't ask at all. I didn't bring it up again, not because I wasn't hurt, not because I changed my mind, but because some silences speak louder than arguments ever could. We moved 2 days later. Boxes packed, baby in my arms, dishes wrapped in towels I hadn't had time to wash. And still, I did what I always do. I kept going. But something inside me shifted, not in anger, in understanding. I understand now that love isn't proven in the big gestures. It's shown in the quiet yeses, the unspoken I see you, the I've got this, the you matter more than the rule. What I needed that day wasn't a diaper change. It was partnership. Not the kind we planned for, but the kind that notices, that moves when the other can't, that softens when the other is stiff from carrying too much for too long. And maybe that's what I'll teach my son someday. That love isn't about fairness. It's about presence. It's not about who changed the most diapers or kept every agreement. It's about who steps in when the agreement no longer fits the moment. So, if you're here, listening, and you've ever found yourself holding everything, the baby, the bags, the silence, and still wondering if asking for help makes you weak, let me say this plainly. It doesn't. You are not asking for too much. You are asking to be seen. And if someone loves you truly, they won't need a reason to step in. They'll just step in. If this story sat quietly in your chest, if you saw any piece of yourself in the space between the words, stay with us. Because there are more stories like this. Not dramatic, not loud, just honest. Click subscribe if you're ready for more, or maybe just breathe. And remember, you deserve a love that answers before you have to beg. And sometimes the smallest no teaches you exactly how alone you've been.